Now I'm pleased to welcome back to the show for the first time in what feels like a decade, singer-songwriter Maja. Thanks for joining me again. How are you?
I'm well. It has been a decade, hasn't it?
It feels like it. Been a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's about a decade.
Yeah, it feels like a long time since I've released music, so I can understand that for sure.
And which release have you listened to the most so far this year? If there's one in particular that stands out.
Yeah, I was thinking about this today, and it's actually been a lot of pop music. Like I guess my most listened to would probably be Megan Trainor's album Treat Myself. Do you know it?
I know Megan Trainor. I'm not familiar with the record at all.
Yeah, it's really great. And Ariana Grande, Sweetener. I've been listening to a lot of pop music. And
Nice. Is there anything in particular about the Megan Trainor record that you enjoy, or is it just fun?
It's fun, but all the songs are really good. Like, she just writes really good music, and it's uplifting, and it makes you feel good. And, like, normally, like, a lot of my songs that I'm releasing this year are not as uplifting. They're more, like, inward and, melancholy. But I love listening to, like, bangers in my car.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, and Ariana Grande as well, her album Sweetener. I don't know if you've heard that one, but it's amazing production. Like, I love all the production on that. Also, do you know Bene? Is it Bene or Bene?
I know the name. I'm yet to dive deep, to be honest.
Yeah, really good. She's from New Zealand, and I've been listening to a lot of. I thought she was Australian, but turns out I was wrong. But she has some really good songs like Wishful Thinking and Afterlife, and yeah, she's like making it big. But her music's amazing. Yeah.
Sweet. I'll have a look.
Yeah.
And last week you released your latest single, He Wants to Know You. What can you tell us about that track?
Okay, yeah, I released this song and I wrote it 2 years ago when I was thinking a lot about boundaries and saying no. And I remember I was telling my kinesiologist, who's like a non-Western therapist, I was telling her about this guy who was texting me, and I was like, I wish he'd stop texting me. And she was like, then don't text him back. Like, it's like, and I was like, oh, I can just do that. And she was like, yeah, you don't have to reply. And I remember that was the first time, because I feel like I often, at that time, like when I was 24, I felt like I had to always explain myself or be like, explain the reasons why I was doing something. But the song is really meant to empower people to say no if you don't want to do something, just say no. Yeah.
And so was it a fairly easy track to write?
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I was listening to a lot of Bill Withers at the time, and I had his essential hits in my car.
Nice.
And I was listening to Napalm's solo album. What's the name of it? Oh, I can't remember the exact name, but I don't know if you've heard it, but it's great. But like, there's so many jazz chords, and it's very like complicated chords. And I was trying to see if I could write something that sounded good, but used a lot of these kind of, jazzier chords. So I was just sitting in my room and I was like strumming away, and I wrote it like a palindrome. So like, palindromic words like race car. It's the same way, one way and backwards. So I wanted the structure of the song is like that. So it's like A, B, C, B, A. So if you listen to it with the yeahs, the yeah, like it's a palindrome. And that was like, I wanted to see if I could do that too, because I remember at uni when I'd studied like composition, we had to do that as, they'd give us these techniques like, write like this. And I'd never done that. And I was like, oh, I really want to see if I can do that in a non-classical way, like in a songwritery way. And my producer was like, I don't know if this should be the single because it's so complicated. And I was like, no, this is definitely the single, because even though it's quite complicated in the way that I've written it, I like, hopefully it doesn't feel that way, because when I listen to it, I just want it to feel like a banger, not like this complicated song,
And so how do you succeed in making something that is complicated but doesn't really appear that way? Or was it kind of just a happy accident?
Good question. I mean, I'm a very determined woman, let's just say that. So I was just sitting there, and I kind of had these ideas, and I did Yeah. But the chorus is quite catchy, and I think that helps. Like having a really catchy chorus, it made the rest of the song flow easier. And like those are my favorite artists, the people who are like, they might do really complicated things, but it feels simple or it sounds simple. And yeah, I think that's when you really nailed it in music.
For sure. And was it a song that you kept going back to over a long period of time, or did you kind of finish it in a short amount of time?
Yeah, good question. I think it took me about a month or two. I felt like once I had the words, because the words came from a poem that I'd written, and I just had the words, I'm finally learning to speak my mind so that he won't ever treat me that unkind or disrespect the parts I love or hate, the temple, the sanctuary I create. That was the first part. And then I was like, I kind of just sat there and I fleshed out that vocal until I got that. And then I kind of just thought of the yeahs as the next bit. And so it helped having the words, but it was like, sorry, what was the start of the question? I've completely. I think
was it written over a long period of time? Was it something that you kept revisiting?
Yeah, great. No, yeah, I think it was quite. Once I had the poem and I put it together, it didn't take me long to put it together. But I guess I kind of played it for a while and I stopped playing it. And now that I'm releasing it, I've started playing it again. And I played it last at like Bendigo. They had like a little mini blues festival thing at the start of the year before we went into the coronavirus. I ended up playing it there, and a lot of people were like, oh, that's like all of the blues people were just like, oh, that's so cool how you do that. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad that they know what's happening. But yeah, I think it's going to be one of those songs that I definitely keep coming back to answer your question.
For sure. And as you mentioned before, there's a bit of a blues influence and also a bit of an R&B influence in the track. Was that something that was apparent to you early on, or did they kind of just happen when you were recording them?
Well, I didn't think it would be as R&B as it was when like before we'd gone into the studio. But when I went into the studio, I was like, here's my reference, and it was this Bill Withers song called Better Off Dead. And I'd already played that song. It's like, she's better off without me, and I'm better off dead now that she's gone. And there was this really good groove in it. And a lot of Bill Withers music, if you listen to some of like his old stuff, not just like Ain't No Sunshine, but like if for anybody listening, listen to all of it. If you listen to the old stuff, it's like, that's like I realized with him and with country music, now that I've listened to a lot of it, the bass and the drums, they just have to like really lock in together. And for us, it was like, okay, we recorded the bass and then the drums as well, but we didn't end up using like a drum kit. We just used percussion because we were trying to emulate that Bill Withers thing. And if you listen to a lot of his music, a lot of it is just percussion. Like, or they have a drummer and a percussionist. So that's how he gets all the those kind of sounds. And so we kind of went in going, okay, let's cut the. But it wasn't until I said to my producer, I want this to be the single, that he kind of really made it groove, and it felt like a single, and it felt more like that R&B vibe. And I guess with all of my music, I do kind of this old sound, but I try to make it new still, if that makes sense. I wouldn't say it's neo soul because it's not that electronic, but like I always want it to feel like, this older sound that feels fresh, like that it's not that it's like Bill Withers, but this, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so what made this track stand out as your next single?
Good question. Yeah, because not everyone was on board clearly for the single choice. Well, I wanted to do for the album that's going to come out hopefully this year if we get out of the coronavirus quicker. It's called I'll Get There. And I wanted to pick, so I'm going to have another single come out later this year. So I wanted to pick two songs that were contrasting, and I was like, when people ask me what my genre is, I say folk soul. So I was like, I want to pick like a soulful song and a folky one. So it was between this one and another one, and this one was more catchy. So I picked this one, and I picked another one called "I'll Get There," which is going to be the title track of the album.
Okay. Nice. And how was the actual recording process for this track? Did you record the track on its own, or was it part of the album?
Yeah, so all of it was part of the album.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are going to be 8 songs on the album. Actually, 9. That's a lie. "Woman I've Become" is also on it, but it's with a different producer, so that's why. But we recorded 8 songs, and we kind of went in with the intention of like making the music speak, I guess, for itself. I wanted to be like authentic in a songwriter way because I think in the past my recordings were more like me and the band, and I wanted it to be like more like Laura Marling-esque, if that makes sense. Like I love that Laura Marling is so like, you hear her and you're like, it's Laura Marling. And I wanted that feeling of like, it's Maja. When I hear that, I'm listening to Maja. And I'd never really felt like I'd gotten to that point, probably until "Woman I've Become." Then I was like, okay, I feel like that. So this whole album, I really wanted it to feel like, when you hear me, that it sounded like me, not just like me in a band or, thing. Yeah.
And so how did the recording process vary from recording the first 2 EPs? How did you get it feeling more organic, or do you think it just was a natural occurrence after like experimenting for so long?
Well, I think I have a bunch of answers to this question. Firstly, I think every relationship is different. So every relationship with the producer will be different. It'll come out differently. So we can never expect anything to be the same. But I realized the reason was that I've become more, as I've gotten older, I feel like more sure of myself and my decisions. And I think also that the producer that I worked with, that we had a lot of ideas and we really explored them, and we were kind of coming at it from the same mindset. So I think that really helped. But I think it was more me as well, like, because that's what my whole album is, like growing up and like, finding your way. Like that's kind of the message. So I think that came across through with the songs.
And you recently released a music video alongside your latest single as well. How was the experience working on that with Dean Swindle?
Yeah, great. Dean and I have worked together on, if you've seen my other video clips, we've done a lot together. We did The Dreamer and Wake Up and Find and Woman I've Become. So I've worked with him heaps. So we get along really well, and I kind of come to Dean and go, I have a vision. How do we make this happen? Or, and then we'll brainstorm and we'll find a way. Like, I like that he says yes to my ideas. I'm definitely a yes person. Like I have a lot of ideas and I want them to be channeled, and, I think it's really important to have good people on your team who are like going to support you in that. And Dean's so good at just like, I kind of went to him and went, okay, I have this idea for this song. I want it to be this needy guy just chasing me around Melbourne and me rejecting him, which is what it is. And he was like, all right, let's do it.
That was the vision?
No to my ideas. Pardon?
That was the vision?
That was the vision. I mean,
fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and I ended up manifesting a lot of, like, I really believe in manifesting and just making things happen. And like, I will just say, I want this, and then it'll happen. Like, I mean, before Dean came, I had to get a lot of things organized. Like, where we filmed the bar scene was a bar in Melbourne that I had, I ended up being like, I need a bar. And then I was messaging the woman that was running it, and it's kind of like, and the actor, like Harry, who's in the video clip, I was like, Harry, I just saw him at an open mic and was like, I need an attractive male. Can you act in my music video? And he was like, sure. So I was like, it just turned out everything just fell into place. But we did like a pretty long recording day. Like we recorded like the whole day from 10 till 9 p.m. with a couple of breaks in between. But because we had 5 locations and limited time, because Dean was just down for the weekend, and we recorded 2 music videos. So that was the second one was a separate day, obviously, but it like it's kind of cool doing everything DIY. But yeah, you have to be really organized, and luckily I am, because other you can't like afford to waste time, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. And last year you released a book of poetry called Coming Home to Yourself. And I'm curious of the impact poetry has had on your lyricism.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's changed the way I write, to be honest, because in Brisbane I would never write like this. I was very perfectionist in Brisbane. I wanted all my words to be perfect, and I would sit at my computer most of the time and I would write. And I would like sit there like analyzing, whereas like now my process is I write poetry, but I go outside and I walk. And a lot of my poetry is kind of inspired by my surroundings and what I'm looking at when I'm walking and what I'm feeling. And I think it's always important. I think Bon Iver said this, but he was like, you can't be like, you have to be a human first, then an artist second. Like you can't try to make art out of being an artist. You have to take that from the human experience. And hopefully that's why people relate to me, because I kind of get on stage and talk about things that are real and what people are experiencing, because that's what I'm experiencing. But back to your question, like now it all comes from the poetry most of the time. And I kind of integrate it into songwriting. So I didn't ever expect to be doing it this way, but it's just what's working now. And it might not work forever, things change, but yeah.
And so how much have you found that you need to transition lyrics from a poem?
I do, as like, I guess it depends what the song needs. Sometimes like the words won't fit, like you'll say something and you'll try to put it and then you have to cut some words, or like I will change some of the lyrics as well, like to fit the song. Like if I have to, like I'll add more lines, or like I'll really try to adapt to the song, because with the song you're working with a structure, right? Like so you have chords and you have, time frames with the bars. So you can't just, this is what I love about poetry. It can be more free form. It's kind of like rap. You can just like, if you want to change it up, you can change it because it's just spoken, but you can't exactly do that as freely in music unless you were rapping. Like
Sure.
then, but even in rap, there's structure because there's still, a beat and bars. So I have to really work with what the song needs. And I thought like one of the poems that I wrote recently, Ghost Town, about everything that's been happening with the coronavirus, I made that into a song. And I kind of just took in the poem Ghost Town, I talk more about like what's happening in the current state of affairs and the political, I guess, sphere of the world. But I just wanted to do that. I also talk about how I'm feeling, like the flowers on my windowsill are withering. I pin my hair back, but I'm not put together. Like I use those words of how I was feeling in these moments in the song over everything else. So I just kind of took the bits that I thought really needed to be, that would work well in the song. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so how do you know whether something that you're writing is more fitting to be a song or a piece of poetry on its own? Have you found more recently that you just write, that you sit down and write poems more often than you sit down and write specifically for a song?
Yeah, that's my problem now, is that I just write so many more poems than I do songs. So it's like, but like with the songs now, I kind of have, I'll think of like a riff or I'll have an idea, but I still, sometimes I have these ideas and they don't fully develop. And it's interesting because some songs just make it and they'll just write themselves and they'll come out. And other songs I'm like, this is a really good idea, but I don't know what else to add to this. And it just doesn't work. So then I give up on it. And I kind of, if I have to come back to it, I will. Like I have a couple of ideas that after this single is, after I do the single launch tomorrow, I want to go back to just writing some more. And I have like some ideas with like I guess, kind of melodies and riffs that I want to expand on more. But I'll probably go back to the poems and be like, can I use any of this? Like, I'll kind of just go through my material being like, is any of this good? But yeah.
Nice. And moving on to some more broad questions. Have you heard any Australian artists recently that have really stood out?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote. So I have a lot of friends in Melbourne who are musicians that I, support, and it's nice to have like, to know, I guess, more people here. I mean, I still have my Brisbane community as well, but Velvet Bloom, she has a really good song called Teacher.
Okay.
And I actually, on another radio station, I had to co-host, so I picked that song. And also the Northern Folk, if you know them, from Albury.
I don't.
Yeah, they're Melbourne now, and they're really good, and they consistently tour and they put out really good music. And Patrick Lionel, who's doing my show with me, who's supporting me tomorrow night, he's really good too, and we kind of collaborate together and work together. So I picked some more like independent people, so hopefully that's okay.
Yeah, it'll do. It'll do.
It'll do. Okay.
And do you have any entertainment or hobby recommendations for anyone still in isolation?
Love it. I puzzles. If I wasn't so busy, I would be doing puzzles. I love a good puzzle. I'm a bit of a nerd like that. Oh. But I get bored very easily. So I think like if coloring books are still in, I'd probably color. I love reading. I feel like since the internet's happened, I just haven't been reading as much. It's not good for my my brain.
Yeah.
But I would like to read more. Hopefully next week I can read more. And I love walking. It's not really a hobby to walk, but I think it's really good for you and it helps a lot.
Fair. What was the latest book that you read?
Oh goodness, I've been reading Kurt Cobain's autobiography.
Oh.
Learning a lot about his death. Yeah. I'm really into astrology, and he has like 8 water signs, and he's a Pisces, so I can understand why he killed himself now. I was like, this is really dark. He has a lot of emotion. Yeah. And then I was reading another book just about money. It's called The Energy of Money, and just like about abundance mindset. And then I started a new one. I haven't properly started it, but when I was in Tasmania, me and my best friend were there, and we met this guy who had hitchhiked around the world, and he wrote this book, The Long Hitch Home. And I'm Serbian, and he was like, oh yeah, I hitchhiked through Serbia as well. And like, but he describes like Tasmania and like, Uluru and all the places that he goes to in this book, but it's like you kind of read the chapters as countries. So I think that's really interesting too, that he just wrote about his travels, and like he was just a guy that decided to hitchhike the whole world from like Europe to Australia.
Jeez.
And yeah, he met his like wife in Tasmania, and they live in Tasmania now. But I was like, that is such an amazing story. And yeah, and I bought this book off him for like $30 that day because I was like, inspired by his story. Like probably 5 years ago, and now I'm reading it because I'm like, well, I'm in isolation and I can't, and I'm a musician. I'm going to read about other people traveling. So those are my book recommendations.
Yeah. All right, sweet. Do you have a go-to cooking record at the moment to help inspire?
Can you explain what that is to me just a bit more, because I'm not exactly sure.
Well, whenever I personally cook, I usually have a go-to artist or a go-to record to put on.
Oh, okay.
What did you think it was?
I thought you meant like, beating someone at your cooking skills, like how fast you are at like your cooking record. Not
I was like,
that you listen to while listening to music.
Yeah, not quite.
Because I wrote, my friend is a better cook than me, so my cooking record isn't very good. But
I wish you just said that.
And I wanted to make chocolate slice for my birthday next week. But A cooking record. My friend often tells me that she listens to my music when she's cooking, and I'm like, I love that. But I make playlists based off the year, so I have a 2020 playlist now that I listen to often. But I should do like a cooking playlist, because I have a period playlist for my period, but I don't have a cooking playlist.
You gotta get a cooking playlist, man.
Yeah, I got to get a cooking playlist going. I'll let you know. Maybe like Leon Bridges, Sam Cooke's.
Oh yeah, Sam Cooke goes down well.
Yeah, for cooking, I'd say that would be good.
100%.
Smooth soul artists.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And what, in your opinion, is the most underrated Australian album of the last decade?
I couldn't think of an Australian album. Can I tell you my other answer?
Sure.
Okay. Well, in my opinion, the most underrated Australian album, album of the last decade is Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not by Arctic Monkeys. I love that whole album in general, and I feel like it was overlooked as one of Arctic Monkeys' best albums, because people focus on the other ones, but it's not as good. They're wrong. It's not
and so what about that album stands out to you?
I just love how grungy it is and how like raw it is. And Arctic Monkeys, like, I don't like their new stuff as much now. With I don't even know what they're putting out anymore. Like, they were my favorite band since I was 14, and then I think they lost me as a fan when they changed like not that they changed. I didn't mind that Alex Turner changed his sound, but like what I always loved about Alex Turner's writing was that he was such a good lyricist. Like, if you liked Arctic Monkeys and you were a fan, you loved the lyrics because he knew how to say things so honestly in such a poetic way. And he kind of, I just think that, now his stuff is like, why'd you only call me when you're high? But like, he used to write stuff like, now that Marty Bum, I see your face. And it's like looking down the barrel of a gun and it goes off, and just like more like complicated metaphors. And I love that album was just like so raw. It's just like four guys playing music, but it's just so like, this is it, you know what I mean? And it had that live but like raw sound, and it wasn't filtered or overproduced. It was just like, this is us, and we're just like these four lads from London, or not London, Sheffield, and we just like play music together and have fun. And that's kind of what the vibe was. But like, it was deeper than just fun, because the lyrics were so like, the fans knew the lyrics were, how good they were and how good the music was too, because they would write really well together as a band. And yeah, that's why I think it's underrated. And plus, I love the title, Whatever People Say I Am, That's What I'm Not. And there's this one line that he says, just because everybody's doing it, does that mean that I should too? And I think when you're a teenager and you're listening to this, you're like, it's good, because it really challenges you to think as a person, like, because there's a lot of peer pressure when you're a teenager. And I feel like Alex Turner was just speaking these truths to me as a youth, and I really understood it. Yeah.
Completely fair enough. I honestly don't know if I've even listened through that record. It's one of the early ones?
Yeah, I think it's the first one.
Okay.
I'm like, let me check. I'm not sure if it's let's see what year it is. 2006.
Oh, geez, okay.
Yeah, so it's got I Bet That You Look Good on the Dance Floor, The View from the Afternoon, Fake Tales of San Francisco, Dancing Shoes, Marty Bum, When the Sun Goes Down. Do you know any of these? Certain Romance?
Vaguely. I feel like I'd know them if at the moment I put them on, but
yeah, if you heard them, I think.
Yeah.
Everybody knew. I bet that you look good on the dance floor. Like, that was.
Oh yeah. Okay.
They're yeah, you know it now.
yeah. No, I'll have a listen. I never really got into them or pressed. I mean, I never really got into much of it. But the only stuff I've really heard from them is really Pristine, since like AM and all that, and it's just not for me. But I have got a few friends who really like the early music.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you get into the early stuff, that's where it's at. Because it is too pristine, I think, the new stuff. But yeah, see what you think of the old stuff
Hmm.
and get back to me.
Will do. And if you had to name one artist or record that has had the biggest influence on you, either personally or musically, who would you name and why? Continuing with the easy questions.
I love it. Yeah, so I feel like it changes all the time because, when I was younger, I would have told you like Fiona Apple or Bon Iver or like Nina Simone. Like that's what I was listening to at like 20, 21. But now it's like, now I couldn't even, I was thinking of this question and I was like, I feel like I'm more influenced by like comedians and like, like writers now than I am musicians.
Okay.
Is it okay that I'm turning your question around?
I mean, it does say it does say personally or musically. So
That's true.
I guess that's all right.
Personally, then, I mean, I love like I take a lot of Amy Schumer's comedy. Like, I know that people might not like her, but I like that she's very good at like her jokes, the way she delivers stuff. I like when I'm doing banter because I'm such a live performer. Like, for me, it was really important with this record to like make it sound like me live because I felt like I hadn't achieved that up until now. And I guess that's the thing with being an artist is you just have to keep going and not quit on yourself until you get to the gold, right? So it's like, and she's like, she was on the road for like 10 years, and I love people who are very like resilient people who didn't give up and who just like kept going. And like the way that she just delivers, and she has a lot of sex jokes and just a lot of just like, she kind of pushes the boundary with that, which I always loved about her. And like when I get on stage, I'm always trying to do that too. And like in my show tomorrow night, I will be doing that again. Like, and I love that about comedians because they really push those like boundaries to make us feel certain ways. And like, I think, musicians, I guess when I get on stage, I treat myself as like a whole, you've seen me perform, but it's like a whole show. It's not just like the music. Like for me, it's like the banter is important, the way that you deliver your jokes, like the way you set it up, like all of that, like I guess, and the writing and like that to me makes a really good show, not just the music. So I guess with a lot of musicians, if I just see them doing, I'm always thinking about how I can stand out more and how I can challenge people's opinions more and like make them think. That's what I like about her. Like Sylvia Plath is one of my favorite writers who's like dead now, but she's, an amazing poet. And I liked her as well because she was super honest and also didn't hold back. So I think for me, it's like people who don't hold back are people who really inspire me and who, just get up there and say, the hard things. Because that's what I try to do with my poetry and my music is. And that's what, like, I think that's what people want in a way because they're looking for honesty. Like sometimes you'll hear something, you're like, that is so true. That line, that's so true. Like I remember just like last week, just driving around listening to like some song, and I was like, oh, I love that because it's honest, and like I think that people can connect with honesty.
Yeah, 100%. Not who I was expecting, but completely fair. And so, can we expect some comedy on the album?
No, but there will be poetry. So.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, someone was like, "You should do stand-up comedy." I'm like, I have too many things right now.
Have little comedic skits in between tracks.
No, that'll be. Yeah, the next. No, It's more. I will have poems running through it though. So we recorded some poetry as well because the songs came out of the poems and Coming Home to Yourself from those specific poems from the book. So I wanted it to feel like it was like a whole integration of that. And I think it'll be really cool because the only person I've heard do that is like Anna. Do you know Ani DeFranco?
No.
Yeah, she's an American songwriter, but she would do like she'd start her set by kind of like, doing her spoken word. And when you listen to her album, it goes through that and she'll kind of break it up with the songwriting. I mean, the poetry. And I was like, wow, I've never heard this before. So I think it'll be cool that's happening. And I think it'll be something nice and unexpected for people probably to be like, oh, wow, didn't expect this track to just be, And people have asked me for that too, though, like at little festivals that I've done. Like when I went to Yakandanda last year, they were like, oh, where can we hear your poetry? And I was like, nowhere yet, but like, I didn't even have the book out then, but now,
Oh, right.
it's nice to be like, well, actually here, you can listen to it here.
Hmm. What else can we expect from you in the not too distant future?
What can we expect? Yeah, so I'm going to release this album hopefully this year. Like, my goal is still, but I do not want to release it until I can tour it because I'm such a live performer.
Mm.
And I feel like it would just be a waste for me to put out an album and not be able to tour it properly and do the shows and have the engagement. And like, so I put out the single in isolation because I still wanted to have this out. And I'm glad I did it, but I definitely want to wait for for the album. So hopefully, by the end of the year we won't be in isolation.
Mm.
But I've got the album and I've got another single that I'll get there, which I also have a video clip with Dean that we're going to be working on soon, like editing that and putting that out as well. But that will come right before the album. So yeah, there's a big focus on just like the album right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet as. And lastly, if you only had a few words to describe He Wants to Know You, which few words would you use?
Okay. I've got fire,
Of course.
fun, and sassy.
Fire, fun, and sassy.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks for joining me again, Maya.
No worries. Thanks for having me.